So, Claudia, do you want to kick us off with
Yeah,
intros?
absolutely. Hello. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining. I'm sure there's going to be a few more folks that start streaming in, so we'll just start talking through our agenda. I'm Claudia, joined here by Eric and Gray. Eric and I are automation engineers here at Parabola, which means that we're building flows with customers like you all day, every day, and ensuring that you get the most value out of Parabola. And Eric, I know I just stole the intro there, so if you would like to do a quick intro on yourself, please do so. And then we can move on to the agenda slide.
Sure, I'll be quick. I'm an automation engineer. I have met a lot of you so far, so nice to see you and nice to meet you if I haven't met you. Feel free to reach out to us with any questions and add to the chat, interrupt us. We love engagement, so keep on engaging with us. Hopefully, we'll make it a very interactive session today.
Absolutely. Awesome. All right. So we have about 45 minutes here. We're going to share a little bit more about how Parabola has evolved recently. We're going to do some live building on the canvas, show you a few features that we recently shipped that you might not yet be aware of, share some best practices on building flows, and of course, leave some time for Q&A. So definitely bring your questions. We're happy to be as interactive as possible here. Awesome. And before maybe we get going here, I'd love to know kind of how involved and how aware you are of Parabola at this point. So if you can drop a number in the chat, 1 to 5. 1 if you've never opened Parabola, and 5 if you're building flows every week. Just want to get a read of the room here. Awesome. Great. Seeing some newbies, 1, some 5, some pros. Exciting. Cool. I feel like we're all across the board here.
Hey, everybody. Bye.
Awesome. Hey,
Excellent. Awesome. So let's start with why we're all here, right? Something we're seeing constantly across almost every customer that we're working with, and I'd bet a lot of you are nodding along already as you're seeing this slide. The most important recurring work at most companies still lives in a spreadsheet of some sort. And the thing that we're seeing is that it's working until it's not working anymore, right? So month-end reconciliations, vendor audits, inventory checks, a manual export, a few pivot tables, and one person that knows kind of all of the steps. And why does it break down, right? Volume is growing, sources may be changing, and there's nothing really auditable in any of it, right? So the errors aren't showing up right away. They're surfacing weeks later, and the logic of the process itself, the actual knowledge of how this works, often leaves the organization when the person does. That's the pattern we're seeing. It's working until it doesn't. And the moment it doesn't, no one really knows why because there was never much to look at except a spreadsheet or one person's memory. And that's exactly the gap Parabola is meant to close, something that's, described in plain English, but runs like software, right? Something that's reliable, auditable, and repeatable. So if we go to the next slide, we'll talk through a little bit more about how Parabola has evolved because the platform has changed a lot since some of you first started building. And Parabola's goal, as we've talked about plenty of times before, if you've talked to us, it's always been the same, right? It's putting the power of automation directly in the hands of the people who actually manage the workflows. And we've been working towards that for a while. In the original Parabola, you had to learn the proprietary step library, right? Drag and drop was already quite a big leap from code, but you still had to know which step to use and how to configure it exactly. It required a lot of depth, a lot of understanding, and it rewarded patience. And a year or so ago, we launched the AI Co-Builder. That flattened the learning curve quite significantly. And if you've used it, you've seen just how much faster it is to actually get started, start building your flows. But it certainly was not perfect. There was still a fair amount of handholding, and the underlying challenge there was that the AI is fluent in code, right? But it was only just learning Parabola. It was essentially trying to work in a language it hadn't fully internalized yet. So today we fixed that and we've empowered the AI to work directly at the level of code, leaning into what it's actually best at. So the result here is a co-builder that we call Prowork that is more powerful, more accurate, more comprehensive than anything we've shipped before, which is exactly what I'm going to show you on the next slide. Well, This is Prowork. Prowork essentially builds completely custom steps for your process, and it documents everything it does as it goes. So you can see that here on the left-hand side of the screen. Each step has a plain language description of exactly what it's doing, why it's doing it, and what's coming out of that step. So there's no black box here. And Prowork is essentially shifting that time-consuming work of building flows entirely to AI, so you can stay focused on the logic and the output rather than the construction of the flow itself. And the net result is that, what used to take hours now takes minutes, and what used to require quite a bit of handholding now largely is building itself. So, in the next slide, how are customers actually using this, right? Here is what we're seeing and how Prowork is solving it. And as I'm walking through these challenges that we're seeing across our customers, I'd love to hear from you in the chat. Which of these four patterns is costing your team the most right now? And I'm also curious which one isn't really a problem for you. So the first one that we're seeing is disconnected systems, right? That force manual reconciliation. Teams are stitching together data by hand across a bunch of different systems: NetSuite, Shopify, SAP, Looker, Coupa, Concur, sometimes, 5 or 6 systems deep, just to answer the question, does this actually match up? So what Parabola does instead, pulling data directly from each source, joining on the right keys, and only surfacing what actually needs a person to review. The mismatches, not the matches. The second piece that we're seeing is a lot of repetitive manual data entry that's eating hours every week. So there's, CSV exports or copying and pasting from a PDF into a spreadsheet, manually uploading it back into an ERP. It's the exact same steps run by, one person or a few people every single day or every single week. And the parabola flow essentially just runs the whole extract, transform, load the data in cycle on a recurring trigger. So this doesn't even just make this process faster, it eliminates this process entirely from someone's task list, which is really awesome. Something else that we're seeing quite often is that issues are being found reactively, right? After they've already caused damage. And this third one is a little bit different, right? It's not about effort, it's about timing. Most teams just don't find out about a stuck order or an inventory shortfall on their own. They find out when a customer complains or when it's escalated already, right? And by then, the damage is already done. So the good thing about Parabola is that flows run on a schedule and they flag the exception before it reaches the customer. So you're finding out on day one and ideally on minute one instead of, week 3. And then the last one that I wanted to share here is institutional knowledge. And we talked about this about a minute ago, but it makes handoffs and scaling very, very difficult. Process knowledge lives in one person's head or in a document, that goes stale the moment no one is really updating it. So every time someone goes on PTO or leaves the company, that's a real risk. So the really nice part about Parabola is that every single time you are refining your flow, editing the logic, the steps in the flow are auto-generating a living SOP straight from the flow itself, right? So it's detailing your sources, the logic, the outputs. So it's never out of date because it's not really a separate document that someone has to maintain and remember to maintain. Excellent. So now I'd love to show how this kind of works in practice, and I'll hand it over to Eric to build out a flow live. And I'm going to check the screen here. Oh, Corey, I see a question for step 2. What happens if the errors are different on each pull? The errors for step 2, is it for the repetitive manual data entry?
Right,
Corey?
yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's repetitive, yes,
Yes,
but when you pull the data, you may not get the same errors every time. So,
totally.
you can code it once, but then when you pull it again, you're going to have a different error. So that code doesn't apply or work. So just curious in terms of when you're doing a repetitive task, but you're
Totally.
not surfacing the same issues, what then?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll show this, I think, a little bit better when we're kind of building this out live, but definitely if you have common errors that you typically see upon this repetitive data entry, you can tell Prowork, hey, when I see errors that it's a misspelling or, the beginning of the string needs to begin with IN or SO, and sometimes it doesn't because someone's manually inputting them. You can give Prowork those patterns so that it resolves them for you right away. So it doesn't even flag them as exceptions anymore. For all net new exceptions, things that maybe you haven't seen, you can also categorize each error in those ways. So it alerts you in different ways or alerts the relevant people in ways that can make it kind of full circle actionable so that they resolve that data upstream. But I think it'll be much easier to understand once we build this out.
Yeah. Thanks, Claudia. That's something we can definitely touch on within this demo. For today's demo, I'm going to go over a sales channel consolidation. So my issue is that I want to look at revenue and margin across Shopify, Amazon, and our wholesale channels at my company, this fake company. And I want to build out this demo today to do that. This touches on point number one that Claudia made, is like all of our systems are disconnected. In today's world, we might be pulling from Shopify and NetSuite and Amazon separately. But this Parabola flow here will consolidate all that data together and create me a clean dashboard and also send alerts to teams weekly in Slack. So let's get building here. So I created a new flow in Parabola, and I'm just in a blank canvas now. And the way to build out this flow is just to be able to prompt this build. So where it says I'm just going to paste my prompt that's just in plain language, that what I just said. I just want to build a sales channel order consolidation flow that pulls data from all of our different systems. It's going to join that data together and then create this report. And this report can be a dashboard that's going to look at my revenue across all my channels, the COGS, the cost of goods, and the gross margin by channel and by month. And so that's what this task list is going to do. We can just describe our process in plain language, and Prowork, which is what we're calling our AI agent here, is going to build it for us by adding steps onto the canvas. There are two different ways this Prowork works. The first way is to import our data or pull our data from different systems. Your system could be anything. It could be Shopify, Amazon, NetSuite. We have this integrations tab on the left-hand side where it could be wherever your data lives. So whether that's extracting data from email attachments such as CSV, PDF files, or Excel files that vendors send you. It could be pulling data from Drive or any of our integrations found on the left side here. If you don't have an integration found on this left side, we also have pull from FTP or pull from API that can connect to your system directly, even if we don't have that native integration. So that's the first point. This AI agent can pull data from your system and start to consolidate that, transform it however you would like. The second way this AI agent works is to take action upon that data. So you can see in my prompt here that I'm prompting it to build a weekly sales channel summary and send that report via Slack. Those are found on our destination side of this integrations about how we're going to take action upon our data. So it doesn't have to just be alerts. We can email file attachments. We can email a PDF file, which is relatively new for us. We can send data to Google Sheets, or we can update our system wherever our system is found on the right-hand side here. And we also have the send to API where we can update our systems directly. And so just to recap, this Prowork agent pulls data in and then takes action upon our data to build out our workflow. And the way to do that is just being able to prompt it in plain language on this left side here while it's going to continue to build. I'm curious, are there any integrations that you want to add to the chat that you don't see like a native integration for, or like any common like NetSuite data that you're looking to pull into Parabola? You can just add it to the chat. Just curious to get a sense of what everyone's pulling into Parabola. Yep, QuickBooks. That is a good one. We do have a QuickBooks native integration now. Any others that come up? For NetSuite Analytics Warehouse, we do have our native NetSuite step where you can pull save searches. We also have a relatively new step called SuiteQL that connects to NetSuite directly, and it's a query language in NetSuite. And so you can just say, like, I want to pull sales orders in NetSuite from like the past 10 days, and it will create a query for you. Prowork will create the query for you to do that. NetSuite Analytics Warehouse specifically, I haven't heard of, but I can look that up. Claudia, any does that come to mind there?
No, I also haven't heard of NetSuite Analytics, but I would assume that the SuiteQL step will be able to pull basically anything from NetSuite that you would like. So it's really, really easy to use with Prowork. You just describe, hey, I want to pull this data set, this report, and it actually recreates it for you directly in the canvas.
Yep.
Can you pull from like SAP, Dynamics 365, and WMSs as well?
Yes. So the first one is SAP. A lot of times we connect to like FTP systems that include like SAP like reports. And so that's commonly how I've seen it. If you can connect to like an API, you can also connect to that. And I'm sorry, what were the other two, the warehouse systems?
Dynamics 365, so Microsoft Dynamics 365, as well as, yeah, typical WMS systems, warehouse systems, Manhattan, Blue Yonder, Amphios, for example.
Yep. And so we pull from Microsoft Dynamics here, and the warehouse systems would be like either need to be an API or like a report being sent in. You can also send reports in on a schedule if you have like, if they could send you an email report every week. And that's also how we can pull in that data.
Okay, thank you.
And yeah, last one I'll touch on is maybe the FedEx reports. FedEx does have an API that we connect to. We're pulling, like we can pull tracking from FedEx using our enrich with FedEx step, which pulls like tracking numbers. But we also have ability to pull pull from the API, which has like a lot more reports, or if they're able to add like a FTP connection or API connection, you can pull that directly too. So out of all this data, your processes are really complex, and I wanted to get into like the differentiators here. So your processes are complex, and your data lives everywhere. Like you mentioned here, it lives in SPS, lives in FedEx, just different sources of data, and that are mostly like scattered all over the place. So this is where Parabola comes in. Prowork is designed to support very large files, messy data, multiple formats, and processes that can vary by region, vendor, and product category. All of that logic, once you bring in that data, can just live in Parabola, and it can be configured in a matter of seconds using this Prowork agent here. And you can see it built out our full workflow while we were just talking, and it's just using plain language to build out that workflow. The second point I want to make is consistency. Customers come to us when consistency and repeatability matter, and these decisions are documented as steps. Unlike chatbots you're working with, and each step executes deterministically. So a lot of times I'm in Claude and I ask the same question twice. I may get back two different answers just because it relies on AI to come up with that answer. In our Prowork steps, we do build using AI, but once the flow is built, each step runs the same way each time. So the 20th run will be the same as the first run. So as my processes become more complex, as your processes are, you can rely on Parabola to run that process the same each time, and especially these business critical processes that you're putting into Parabola. And the next point I want to make is collaboration. Because Parabola houses these business critical processes, you want to be able to share that. In a Claude, for instance, if I wanted to share something I did ad hoc with Claudia, that's really hard for me to do. And I've done it before. And it's not a great experience because Claudia has to read through all these chats to see how I determine this answer. In Prowork, you can see it automated our documentation on the canvas, and then I can share this flow with Claudia, who will be able to view it or be able to edit it directly. And she can clearly see the step from point A to point B about how these things are being added, and see it being documented as well. So it's also very auditable because you're able to trace your data from point A to point B and ask questions to this builder. If I go to ask, I can ask something like, how is this calculated? So if I give Claudia like viewership access, she can still ask questions about my flow and see how certain margins were calculated. So let's do that right now. So I'm going to open the step. I'm just going to go to one of the gross revenue, gross margins, and then I'm just going to ask a question here. How is this calculated? And so you can see it's going to look into the sidebar. It's going to give us our pinned row, or this is from the Amazon channel. And then you can see the revenue, the COGS, and how gross margin was calculated here. If I wanted to trace my data across all Amazon channels, I can just double click into this and trace this row. And I can clearly see the orders associated with this. If I click across, let's try that again. I'm going to click one of these orders. Okay, you can see that it comes from Shopify, and then I can trace my data here. I can also ask the question like how, like what orders are associated with this data, and then it will tell me as well. So I can say, let's see, what orders are associated with this revenue. And so it's going to look for the orders and then tell me a response back about like what these orders include. And so that's collaboration. The next thing is ease of use. And no other product is easier to use because I can just really explain my processes, ask questions in plain language to the sidebar, and it's going to come back with a response based on the data I have on the canvas. So you can get really detailed. You can see as I click across these specific steps, it's going to be pinned to the sidebar, and I can ask very specific questions about how something was calculated, what orders are associated with this revenue. So I can be sure that my business critical processes, or when I share the sales channel and dashboard with my team, that I'm confident in these answers, and then they can go back to this flow and be confident that what they're seeing is accurate. And I see we have some questions here, so let's get into those. Oh yeah, this is a great question. Can you explain the difference between traditional with AI steps versus Prowork now, and highlight some different use cases where either might be more beneficial if applicable? So that's a great question. So as I mentioned before, when we're building out this workflow, we're using an AI agent to build the steps onto the canvas. These are going to be deterministic steps where each time you run it, it will run the same. And so steps with AI, we still have. So if you're looking to categorize, we have a categorize with AI step. So for instance, going back to that error summary, if you're looking at 5 different errors and say the description is in just plain language coming from a system that describes the error, you can describe it as like different types of errors, and you can use AI. That would be like an AI step that you want to use rather than relying on deterministic steps. So that would be using the categorize with AI step. Whereas the steps that we have on the canvas, this data is going to be, it's going to change, but it's going to be the same columns and the same type of data. And so we can just add these transformation steps on the canvas and not have to use AI in our workflow to build this out. Noah, does that difference make sense? The next question here is, will it be possible in the future to create shareable links for these dashboards? Yes, so these dashboards, that's a great question. So I'm going to open this dashboard.
Hold on, Rafi.
And I'm going to click a share artifact, and I can share with people with access to this flow or anyone in my organization. And then I can also just pop it open. And each artifact has a unique link that's you can open, and it's going to be an artifact for this flow. And you can see like the clear like dashboard that we built. So talking about how to share it, this is available to anyone in your organization. So they don't need to be editors in your organization. They could be like, they could have a viewer like access to Parabola. They just need to have Parabola access to be able to view it at this time. Anything to add there, Claudia?
Nope, that's largely it. And I know you mentioned that there are some teammates that might not have access to Parabola. Right now, this shareability is limited to folks with access, and even folks with just viewer access, not edit access, will be able to access these artifacts. Our team is actively working on ways to securely share this more broadly with folks outside of Parabola, so stay tuned for that. But right now, it's super, super easy to add folks to the Parabola platform from your team page. You just add a team member, add them as a viewer, and they'll be able to access this. And another thing I just like worth double clicking into is, of course, whenever your flow refreshes, whenever you make any refinements to your flow, this artifact will also refresh. So it is kind of like a dynamic interactive output as well.
Yeah, and one point on these artifacts, so you can see that I have my channels that I can click through. This is the artifact that we built. I'm using this flow. And I can click through my different channels to see the revenue, COGS, and gross margin associated with each. Say I wanted to also add a filter. So we have a channel filter, we have a month filter, but I want to add a filter to look at. I just want to search specific order IDs. So that's what I'm going to do here. So I'm just going to add an order ID filter that I can search for in this artifact. Oh, and I'm in ask. Okay, let's hit no. And while this is loading, I just want to touch on another feature that we added is this attachment. So this is especially useful while building artifacts because we can upload images or PNG attachments. So if you come across like a PowerPoint that you really like or a dashboard that you really like, you can add that attachment here, and then you can say, build me an artifact that looks like this, and it will inspect this, like inspect whatever you upload, and it will build that for you. It doesn't have to be just images. It could be Excel files, could be PDF files, and that Prowork can understand and better like build for you. And so in addition to just being able to speak your process, if you have any SOP documents that you already have created, you could just upload that as an attachment now and as a way to be able to interact with the chat as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other kind of hidden tip that I really like, even if, especially if you have an SOP document and you would like to first double check what the plan is before even adding steps to the canvas and then verifying and validating every individual step. What I like to do is actually change over to ask mode, which Eric was just on. So you see at the bottom of the chat, there's a little build icon. You can actually flip that to ask mode. Share all of the context about your process. You can even use the voice to text, describe your process end to end, and Prowork will actually sketch out step by step how it would approach building the flow. And you can go back and forth with Prowork and say, hey, I really like how you approach step 1 and 2. Don't love step 3. That's not aligned with my process. And kind of essentially map out the entire process end to end, and then change back to build mode, go ahead and say, okay, go for it, build it, and it'll build out that process as you aligned end to end, while you don't even need to be kind of on this screen, right? You can move on to other tasks at that point and return to it after.
Yeah. That's a great point, Claudia. And one other point I want to make is you can also start to ask insights about this. So like you can say what channel um, has the has most cogs. That's not great English, but but it will come back and answer like the question about like where are we spending the most money. Um, okay, so you can see while this is loading, you can search for an order ID now. Yeah, it just came back with a table here. You can see NetSuite has the highest amount of cogs. Um, we'll jump back to the dashboard. I'm just going to search for one of the order IDs from Amazon that it included to see what this looks like. Okay, and so you can see it just added a filter, but that filter changed the whole dashboard just because we're able to search for specific order IDs now. And this is really helpful if you have like an error reporting dashboard. If you want to search for like specific orders that are held up at a certain location, this is a great filter to include, and you can share this dashboard with your team. Also, being able to search for orders is a very common use case that we see with whatever reporting we're doing, and so just thought that was helpful to show here. Are there any other artifacts that like people are dying to try out or that have built already and that are very like excited about to see in the world?
Sorry, I had to jump in and out. I was triple booked, but this was really good run through. I did miss the piece where we were creating the dashboards. Is there any difference from just requesting to do a normal dashboard, or do you have to say like an artifact visualization?
Yeah, that's a great question. You can say, build me a dashboard that includes these visualizations. So you can think of them as like the dashboard being like, as long as you prompt like dashboard or something similar to that, it will generally build this. And you can say like, in this dashboard, I want to see a revenue trend and I want to see gross margin by channel. You can include like all the like components of that dashboard that you want to see, or you can just leave it very basic like we've done today about like, what did we say? We said build an artifact outlining revenue, cost of goods, and gross margin by channel and month. And then this is what it came up with. So you can be very broad or you can be very specific about like what components you want in your artifact.
And, we can share this out with the team. I've been trying. Everyone likes the outputs that I'm getting, but I'm having to push a lot of it to Google Sheets because my company is a Google Sheet company. But I'm assuming this link will give them click and play flexibility without them having to log into Parabola.
Yeah, so they'll have to be logged into Parabola, but they won't have to like jump into a flow to see this artifact. All they have to do is go to this like generated URL associated with this artifact, and then they'll be able to clearly see like the different the artifact here. And if I refresh the page, you can see it's going to be updated with the order ID now, so we can search for orders. Good question. Any other questions? That's a great question. Can we add alerts such as email notifications when something is due or coming up? Yes. So in our flow, I believe we did ask to build a weekly sales channel report to send in Slack. Let's see if it added. Okay, so it built the report, and let's see. I can say send this to me in Slack. I'm going to switch to build mode to send a weekly report. And it's going to add our send to Slack step. And we have the ability to send Slack messages to a channel or to DM a user whenever this runs. And you bring up another good point too, is that how does this run? So it pulls from all of our three systems, and we want this to run weekly. So I'm going to go up to run flow. I can click run flow, and I can just schedule this to run right now, just manually run this flow. But if I want to schedule a trigger, I'm going to go to the triggers tab here. I'm going to add a recurring schedule, and I want to schedule this weekly. So I'm only going to run this on Monday at 8 a.m., for example. And then I can click save schedule. And so now this is scheduled to run every Monday at 8 a.m. If I wanted to add more schedules and say I can run a monthly report, I can run this on a certain day of the month, or I can run this every hour, every 30 minutes, or every 10 minutes. I don't think my team wants to receive an alert from me every 10 minutes, but it's something that we can do here if it's a mission critical process.
Yeah, what happens if there's a failure on one of the runs? Does it alert you to a data failure, or does it, potentially let you underreport because you weren't aware?
Yeah, so I will have a failure when I run this flow, and so I'm going to run it, and then I can see like what the error is. The error is I haven't signed into my Slack yet, so it's going to error. But it's also going to send me an email saying this flow failed to run. Like go fix this issue. And you can see like there is an error in the send weekly Slack report. See log below for details, and then once it finishes running, we can click into the log and see what happened. So the log is please select a user to send direct messages to. So we haven't selected a user yet, so that's why this flow was errored. And so we'll get an email about this in our email as well, saying like this flow has an error associated with it.
Okay, thank you.
The question about versions, that's a good question. Let me see if I understand this. So the question is there a way to save versions the way we would an Excel spreadsheet with multiple dates, or will it continually override the latest data set? Also, is there a way to just get an Excel pivot as an export, or is it only possible to do the dashboards? So I'll touch on the versions first. So if I click into run flow again, this dropdown, you can see history, and then we have a run history as well as a version history. So if I go back to this version, I can restore this version, and I can restore it as a new draft. I can replace the live version or restore a version as a new flow. I'm going to select restore as a new draft. At 3:31, I think the Slack send to Slack wasn't there. So yeah, so like at this point, we removed this, like we haven't created that send to Slack message. And so that's how we're able to go back versions in Parabola. If you're looking for versions about like versioning your data, so like this will run weekly and we want to see the sales report at this week. And then say we want to see the sales report for the next week, but we want to still reference back how we did historically. We have the ability to do that using a parabola table. So we can send to a parabola table to update this. And this will append data like historically. So for every run, we can send our data. We can say this is the week of week of 8/3, and then we can say like the week of 8/3, these were the sales orders. And so we can get that historic log over time. You can use a parabola table, which is just our way of storing data, or you can use a Google Sheet to start to append that data each time. And so in this, you can also incorporate that in the dashboard where you can say sales report week over week, and you can start to get into more interesting sales channel reports and margins based on that historical data. Did I answer your question there, Katie?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Of course. Are we able to send the dashboard link to Slack? Yes, so you can also, so I'm just going to like, this is the dashboard link. I can send like, include I'll just go back to my live version. I'm just going to say include the dashboard link in Slack message. It won't like preview the dashboard, but I think that's a cool like product feature that we can request is like to see like preview whenever we like paste this link somewhere. I think that would be an interesting like project request that we can do, but we can still include the link within our chat here or within our message. Yes, that's also a great question. If you were to build a workflow for an email automation, can we assign separate emails for certain contact groups? Also, can you assign email for our company domain as the sender? I'll touch on the first one first. We have a email by row step, send email by rows. And this step will email, so for every row, it will send an email and in our recipients. So all we have to do is add our recipients to this email. So say I want to send 2 emails, one to Claudia at parabola.io and one to Gray at parabola.io, and I want to send them like Amazon and NetSuite data separately. So what this will do is it will create 2 rows, one to Claudia and one to Gray. This could be any number of recipients. So you can say like send this to like internal versus external, for example. It will create 2 rows and then it will send them separate sets of data. So we'll send Claudia Amazon and Gray NetSuite data. And that can work by sending emails by rows in this step. And then we can format that in text or HTML. What HTML is just like a way to beautify your email. You could really get it like looking like a dashboard. So if I wanted to send them like a clean table about like all the rolled up Amazon report, I can send them that in an email separately for 2 different sets of data as well. For that second part of the question, can you also assign email for our company domain as the sender? You can do that using a send by API step, but you would need an API key for your email. And we currently don't have like a native way to do that. It will come from Parabola when you send this email. And thanks, Gray, for the shout out for love of an HTML email. All right, I'm probably over on time. How am I doing, Claudia?
I think this is great. Yeah, perfect timing. And it's worth double clicking into the HTML emails. Truly, anything that you can visualize as an artifact, you can also visualize in the email because it's all HTML code underlying there. So even if the sender is from Parabola, the full branding can be aligned with your company. And we've seen some really beautiful emails come out of this, which has been really awesome to see.
Yeah, totally. I'll send you an email, then you can paste it into the chat so we can all see. Sounds good. I'm going to run this flow. I'm going to jump back to our slides though, so we can keep going through our deck.
Yeah, I think we covered a lot of this already. Maybe we can, yeah, even ask the group here around any additional maybe tips and tricks, any other questions that you may have. I know we're running up right on time, but both Eric and I can stay a little bit over if anyone has any pressing questions here or anything else worth covering. Let us know.
I have a quick question, Claudia and Eric. If I'm not already associated with a Parabola account, how can I get signed up? And is there a free version that I can possibly use and start automating?
There sure is. Yep. So you can sign up for an account directly on the Parabola website to start building out essentially for broader kind of company wide Parabola access that would go through whoever already either is managing the Parabola account or reach out to us directly and we can get you connected to that person. So my email, maybe I'll drop our emails in here as well. Claudia at parabola.io, and then Eric at parabola.io. But if you just want to explore the tool for the first time, yeah, definitely feel free to sign up. It's totally free to try it out. Great question, Gray. Awesome. Maybe the last thing I'd leave everyone with, it's truly never been easier essentially to get started with Parabola. I like to say that really the only barrier to getting started is being able to describe your process. If you can describe what you want, you can build that and you can build it very fast. So no one knows your processes better than you do. And now Parabola meets you exactly where you are, even using voice to text, just describe everything you do, start to end. It'll build it out, and you never have to do it again. Really, truly set it and forget it, and focus on other, even more important things.